Hi, this is Joe Rabel with Rabel Stock Research. So we're going to start the show talking about a lesson on RSI. I think this can be really helpful. It isolates a particular setup that does not happen all that often, but when it does, you want to really understand it and be able to take advantage. All right, so we're going to go through that. And then I'm going to give you a slightly different way of how I look at the sector review, something that I send out in my weekly report, just to give you an idea of kind of where we're situated in the different sectors. And then we'll go through some indices and also talk about the stocks that were requested this week. Okay, so I've got two weekly charts up on the SPY. On the right, I've got the RSI 5, and on the left, I've got the RSI 20. Let's focus in on the right one because I wanted to talk a little bit about Larry Connors and some of the work that I studied from him, which basically what he was doing was he was looking for stocks that were in an uptrend, and he defined an uptrend by anything that was above the 200-day, I believe. I mean, it's been a while since I've looked at that work, but he's looking at price and some form of moving average to kind of define if you're above a rising 200-day, then that means that time frame is in an uptrend. And then what he would look for is a short-term RSI. I believe he was using like an RSI 3. All right. And he would be looking for periods where it would get oversold in an uptrend, and he would try and take advantage of that and look for a pop to the upside. Now, he was doing this on a daily chart. So I'm looking at weeklies, but it's still the same point. It's the reason why I started looking at this. I started looking at the different timeframes. I thought the 2 or the 3, which is what he was using, I thought it was a little too quick and offered too many signals. And then I was looking at a 4, and then I switched it to a 5, and it really felt like this was the right one, because what we're trying to identify are periods where we're in an uptrend, but we get this move down. And really what we're looking for is a move below the 50 line. If we can get a move below the 50 line while we're in an uptrend, then we've got a pretty good opportunity to buy a stock that's bullish in an oversold condition. All right. So at least that's the concept behind it. And I just wanted to point out, it was from Larry Connors where I learned that. Now, one of the things that I want to point out is that I don't really use the moving averages for this. When I'm looking at RSI, I look at the 20 RSI. So the 20 RSI being above the 50 line is a pretty good trend indicator. It's as long as that's above and stays above through pullbacks, then we know we're in a pretty strong environment. It gives you an element of momentum on top of the trend indication. Okay, so if you're above the 50 mark through pullbacks, in other words, if the RSI 20, a slower moving RSI, can stay above the 50 line, then you're in a pretty strong trend. All right, and you can go and look for oversold conditions on the RSI 5 to offer you setups. Now, I don't necessarily do it that way. A lot of times what I'll do when this gets oversold like this is go down to the smaller time frame and look for an entry. All right, but for the cases of today, for the purposes of today, I just want to explain why I'm looking at the RSI 20 and then the RSI 5. Now, I don't display it this way. I actually look at it this way. Now I've got a weekly chart on the left and a daily chart on the right. And you can see I've saved myself a lot of space because I've overlaid the 20 and the 5 together. All right, very easy to do on this ACP program. Now, what we're looking for are periods where, and here's our 50 line, we're looking for periods where the gray line, the 5, is coming down below the 50 level, all right? And the RSI 20, the red line, is staying above. All right, that's a simple. There are some caveats to that, but I'm just going to keep it really simple because I want to explain something even more important to me. When we're in a really strong trend, these moving averages are moving up. I want both moving averages rising in this situation. All right. And RSI 20 stays above 50 through a pullback, but also we get a move down to the 30 mark or lower. This actually touched the 30 mark. I like it when it just drops down just below, but 30 is close enough. If we get to that 30 level, we are deeply oversold and we're in an uptrend. So this is more of that Larry Connors mentality. I'm looking at an uptrend, strong uptrend, because both moving averages are rising. We get a strong dip that causes an oversold reading. We want to look to take advantage of that. All right. Now, I'll give you an example. Let me see if, let me move this. It doesn't happen all that often, just so you're aware. We don't get these signals all the time, so you want to be ready for them when they show up. Here's a great example on the daily chart. Let me reset the scale. So we're moving up in 2023 off the bear market low, right? We get this dynamic move to the upside. We get some strength, and we get a pretty sharp pullback over in the daily chart. It just, pulls back for 4 or 5 straight days. Look at how oversold this gets, down in the 20s on the RSI 5. And this is way, way above the 50 mark. When we see this, and this line is still rising, the 40 will almost always be rising. But if both lines are still rising, we can take advantage of this by looking for any kind of a reversal off the low. We can be a lot more aggressive on this kind of entry because we know that we're in a strong uptrend and we know we're deeply, deeply oversold. All right, so we want to try and take advantage of that when it takes place. If you look at in fact, I'm going to give you another example. I'm going to go and switch this to the hourly chart. If you notice, we got a pullback here, and most of the time, this pullback is going to come closer to the 50 mark. Now, if you notice, this line is starting to lose some slope, but it hasn't rolled down. As long as we don't have a negative slope to the 18, you can consider it. All right. Now, preferably, once this starts to roll over, it doesn't mean you can't take a trade like this. All right. But preferably, we want the situation where the lines are rising. All right. Both lines are steadily rising. When you have that, you have a very good opportunity. Go look at NVDA back in 2020 when we had the bear market in the COVID period. All right. That was on a weekly chart. It came down. Both lines were rising. It got oversold and it snapped back and went straight up. This is an indication that I've been looking for a very, very long time and using it. It's very powerful when it comes up. Not a lot of times it'll happen when the market is pulling back after a strong move, and some of the strongest stocks will pull back with it. But it's like a rubber band being pulled down, and then all you do is let go, and it snaps right back. So that's kind of what we're on the lookout for: is that built up tension from a pullback into a strong uptrend. If you're enjoying the content, hit that like button and also subscribe. So my services can be found at rabelstockresearch.com. I'm on this page right now. You can see at the top, I've got my advanced trend and momentum courses. There's 3 different courses now. I've individually priced them, or you can buy them as a bundle, and they are lifetime access now. So I changed that. It's not year to year. Okay. And then we have the individual package. I have about 2 to 3 reports each week, plus a special video, weekly video for that package that covers a lot of details into what I'm seeing for the week. So if you have an interest, go ahead and take a look. Also, the book is on the book tab. You can go if this is a good place to start if you're new to my methodology. Before we get going, my comments are for educational purposes only. Please do your own due diligence before making any investments. All right, so I want to show you the report on Monday I send out. At least this is part of the report. I get a lot of questions about these reports, so I just thought I'd give a really quick and brief outline of something that I think is pretty useful. So these are the different sectors. There are about, in this review, there are about a little over 400 stocks broken down by sector that I go through one by one. All right. And what we've got here, and I'll just use this basic materials as an example. So currently I'm showing short-term positives for the basic materials up at 90%. That means I've tabulated each and every one of the individual stocks that are in the review that are in the basic materials sector, and I'm showing whether they have positive momentum on their weekly chart. And that's what I consider to be short-term positive. It doesn't mean it's in an uptrend or a downtrend. It just means that it's got positive momentum in place, and that really increases the likelihood that we could get an upside rally from those stocks. All right, so it has positive. It's basically a short-term positive. That's why I categorize categorize it that way. So we're up to 90% when we're looking at that on the basic materials. Now, the long-term positives are essentially all the stocks inside the basic materials that are in uptrends, that are confirmed uptrends on their weekly chart. So when we look at it that way, all right, we've got a pretty good way of sort of breaking down what's actually taking place. And you can see the periods where the short-term positives get oversold. What I really like is when we get oversold, but we're still above, the long-term positives are still around the 50 mark. When we get those, they tend to be very good opportunities. We saw one of those recently on the most recent decline in the basic materials. One of the things I did want to point out, the only sector that is not above the 50% mark right now on its long-term positive chart right now is the energy, and it's like 41. Every other one of these sectors is showing more stocks that are in uptrends, that are in downtrends, or even neutral. All right. So anyway, I just thought this was worthwhile to be able to see these. We do have a few getting overbought on the short-term positives. So I like to monitor those. We got the basic materials overbought. We've got consumer discretionary overbought. Industrials are getting close. Short-term positives for financials are getting overbought. And if you notice, almost every single financial that I do in the large cap universe is currently in a uptrend. All right. It's pretty significant. I think actually pretty important. We just had technology is trying to turn up. All right. It hasn't really clicked in from a short-term standpoint, but it is showing some signs of improvement. Now, the REITs and the utilities both were overbought and starting to turn down from an overbought condition. All right. Anyway, I thought this was be a good way to look at the sectors a little differently this week. Let's go ahead and move on. Okay, we're going to switch over to my 5-chart setup, and I'm going to go through a couple of indices and then all the symbol. There were a lot of symbol requests this week. I'm going to try and get through all of them. Anything I don't get through, I'll do the following. Okay, so QQQ. So one of the things I'm really focusing on right now, because we're not seeing much change on the monthly chart or the weekly, other than the fact that we're still struggling a bit on the weekly to get through this key level on the QQQ at 500. That's a big round number. We had a reversal there, and looks like we're still having some issues, and we're not showing a lot of strength in terms of new momentum on the weekly chart. All right. If we go to the daily, this is where it starts to bother me, because a weekly chart can take some time to kick in the momentum. The momentum is going to have some lag to it. But on a daily chart, we've made a pretty substantial move to the upside. And yeah, the MACD has moved up a little bit, although it does look like it's really tiring out on this as well. But look at how Green DI it tried to make a few moves above 25, but it's just barely, and now it's already dropping back down below the 25 line. And notice how ADX was never get the green, based on the buyers, the ADX was never able to get above 25 through this whole move to the upside. Now we're into this a little bit more important resistance zone, and I'm sort of looking at, I'm waiting for one of two things to happen. Either big red bar and sellers show up, because we have not seen sellers. Now here's the peak in the sell. Well, actually, here's the peak in the sellers, next peak in the sellers, next peak in the sellers, next peak in the sellers. You see how we've made lower highs in the sellers? We need a breakout in the sellers to really take out above these prior couple peaks here. And that to me would happen on a big green bar, a big red bar. If we got a big red bar, that would tell me that this is probably going to work its way back down lower into a bigger support zone of 475, 480, something like that. Now, if we get the opposite, if we can get a big green bar breaking out through 500, then I think we're on to something, and we're going to see a lot of these stocks that have been kind of consolidating and correcting maybe really kick in and get another move to the upside. I actually think the healthy thing would be is if this came down and consolidated a little bit more, spend a little bit more time building a little bit bigger base. So that's kind of what I'm thinking. All right, let's look at this IWM. Now, what I want to point out is how, actually, I should have left this chart up. Look at how disappointing this is. The stock comes up. It looks like it's trying to break out above this prior high. Looks like Green DI is trying to get things going. And then look at this monster red bar re-entering the breakout area on the daily chart, right? And now green and red are kind of touching each other again. ADX is dropping because those two lines are together. So we don't have the kind of confirmation that I'm looking for on a momentum basis. We need some strength in the momentum. if we get strength in the momentum, especially with this green DI breaking out, then I think we're going to start to see the relative strength improve. And I think the overall environment really starts to improve along with it. All right, let's start going through some requests. So I know I'm a little late on this. This was from last week. I don't think this was a bad entry, what you were bringing up. We had the little higher low here. We've got really good group action, both and the metals and both gold and silver. So I don't have a problem with how you've handled this. I think you just have to recognize that you're dealing with a very volatile stock that is in a volatile area of the market that's going to have these kind of movements. All right. So I'm a big believer in setting your plan in place and following your plan. That's kind of what I teach the subscribers to say. Just stick with your plan. Don't micromanage this position because I think you can shake yourself right out of it. But I don't have a huge problem with how you went about taking this trade. All right. Boeing. So, yeah, I'm not a huge fan of this. I see that, you know, it's coming down into this area where it's found support in the past, but I don't see that there's one thing that does have me feeling somewhat interested in this. All right. And it's using the ADX for what it's not really meant to be used for. So we get the drop here and we get confirmation in the strength to the downside here. All right. And then we get a rally and then we make another move to the downside. And if you notice, the ADX really has just barely crossed the 25 level. That's a sign of me that to me that the decline phase is losing strength and we should be on the lookout for a reversal. Now, with that said, we've got declining moving averages, right? MACD is still, you know, yeah, it's trying to diverge off this low, but I think those lows are too far apart. I think it's going to take a little bit of time to get things going here. What I would be looking for is real strength on the daily chart, maybe even push this up towards 170 and then maybe look for a pullback after that. Okay, Intel, way too much damage done here. This is what I call the mending phase after massive damage. All right, this is the injured athlete that doesn't just twist an ankle or something like that, but he's got like something's broken. He needs to go through a full rehab period. It takes a long time. Sometimes it's 6 to 12 months. All right, so take your time on this. Even if you're trading it, I mean, we're running into a declining 18. A weak line, I think it's an uphill battle. Starting to see some signs of life in Peloton. It obviously has gone through a really rough period. It is a low ADX pattern that's trying to emerge, but here's my opinion here. I would look for this to move up and then play the first pullback. I don't think I'd play this right off this low. It isn't really taking out the prior high on the weekly. Even if I'm drawing these down, I mean, there's just really it's not a really clean reversal yet. So let it push up, show some momentum, and then play the first pullback. Okay, look at something a little bit different. Zoom video. This is a little bit more intriguing. I actually like the fact that this went to a new low. Look at that undercut and then immediately reversal with the big green bar. Now, I really think this is going to get through these highs, but we get a lot of confirmation on a move coming up through 75. Don't have a problem if you wanted to play this, especially if you get a little bit of a dip on the daily chart. All right, I like this MUX. What we're looking for now, we got the zero line reversal and we got a low ADX condition. We had a pullback, which was a pinch play on the monthly. Good volume pattern. Looks like things are really starting to turn around. We need this to pull back and I think test this support area out and then form a higher low. But the momentum signs are really good. I think this is turning the corner. IREN. So we're pulling back to the 18-month. But the way we did it on the weekly, I don't really like. We've turned the 18-week down. You see how this line is declining? So one of two things needs to happen. Either we're going to fail here, come back down, test this, and then come back up and form kind of like a double bottom and then form a double breakout through the double top at 10. Or we're going to bust through this, and then we want to look for a pullback as this is cupping around. That's what I would be looking for as I'm going through this pattern and looking at this. The volume was pretty heavy on the way down, so I'm really not inclined to just take this as it's turning up off the daily chart or something like that. It just doesn't do it for me. It's going to need a little bit more confirmation. Upstart Holdings showing signs of life for the first time. Low ADX condition through this period. And then we get strength here. Now, this happened the last time. All right. And look at how it pulled back. This is why we did this. Is there's two parts to this, right? We have the up move and now we're looking for the down move. There's actually three parts. We get the down move and it's not like this. It's more orderly. If we get that, then we're looking for the trigger to the upside. That'll usually take place on the daily chart. Right now, I think you got to watch for a pullback here. It's up 3, 4, 5 weeks in a row. We need a pullback and we need it to be orderly. If that's the case, then I'd really start to take a hard look at this one. Sphere 3D. We are starting to perk up. I like the volume pattern here, but right now this is really just a short-term trade. We don't really have much going on the weekly chart. There's really not any real momentum yet. Now, if you wanted to play this off the daily using the hourly for entry, you could do that. But you know, it's really more of a trade, maybe up towards 1.25, 1.5, something like that. So you'd have to be pretty nimble if you were going to do that. TGB, so another mining company. Look at the strength here, the pullback. Nice look to these. The volume pattern is good. We're finding support at the 18-month. Now look at what we were talking about. See how we crossed below the declining 18 and now we're pulling back? This is what I was talking about. This is what we're looking for. Now, if this can turn up, take out a high of the prior, like take out this week's high to the upside. Maybe in the form of an opposing trend pattern on the daily chart, then I would be pretty interested in this. We're holding the zero line and we've got low ADX in place. So really the overall pattern I think is pretty attractive. We just need a little bit more confirmation with an entry pattern to the upside. And I think that would come in the form of a higher bottom forming on the weekly chart. Thanks for joining me. If you have any stock requests, send them to stocktalk@stockcharts.com, or you can just put them in the comment area below. Also, if you want to learn more about some of these techniques, you can go to my YouTube channel called Invest Like a Pro. Have a great week. We'll see you next time.